Right, you know, and first things first, I really want to apologise for the lack of uploads recently, because it's not been good enough. I've been slacking, I've been lazy, and I would say I've been so busy. I kind of did my GCSEs and then crashed, I'll be honest. So I've been slacking on the channel, but I'm going to improve it. Now let's get on to the subject of today's video. Right, you know, and the Pixar and Disney relationship has always been a really amusing one to watch, to be honest. How the tables really turned there, from the desperation from Pixar to let them make Toy Story and all the changes they kept making to it in that battle, from Disney just straight up buying with them because they couldn't compete with them, only for John Lasseter to take the helm at both studios and to completely reverse situations, with Disney going back to their golden era, making iconic films, whereas Pixar's output dropped noticeably. And while they still had hits in that time, the likes of an Inside Out or a Coco, which were very well received, there were also films like Cars 2 or The Good Dinosaur, which just didn't have that same box office or critical reception. However, in recent years, and especially since the pandemic, Pixar has kind of felt like an afterthought for Disney, and I feel like the blurred lines over time between what a Pixar film is and what a Disney film is has really got closer. I mean, when Disney did Wreck-It Ralph and Pixar did Brave, it looked like they could have been reversed, but it now feels like Pixar maybe doesn't have that same identity. And while John Lasseter was rightfully removed for all the great reasons, his absence and his creative vision not being there is absolutely imminent. And sadly, so far, this decade before now has been all box office failures and misfires, at least when it came to success for Pixar, although a few of these films were very solid. Now, in a post-pandemic world, cinemas are less popular, and this was a declining thing over time as streaming has become more prevalent, but people nowadays only go watch these films now if they're highly anticipated major Hollywood events, in the vein of something like a Spider-Man No Way Home, a Top Gun Maverick, or the very successful Barbieheimer phenomenon from last summer. And with Disney Plus, I think many parents, for example, are less inclined to maybe take their children out to the cinemas because, well, it's easier to just wait because you're going to get it for free in a couple months, and theatrical runs and times are heavily reduced over time, which is a thing that's not really been in their favour. So that is what you could probably relate and say that's why films like Elemental or Turning Red or Lightyear didn't deliver the box office success that Pixar would have hoped. But that's all an excuse, because Inside Out 2 opened to a major box office global success. It tapped $2 billion in 2 weeks worldwide, and is now currently, as I record this video, the 10th most successful film at the box office of all time, just overtaking the original Avengers, and recently became the #1 animated film, if you don't count the Lion King remake. And it's absolutely crushed anything Disney or Pixar made. This should be a massive win for Disney, a company that haven't had a lot of wins in recent years. A very needed success, a decade that's been mostly disastrous ever since Bob Iger left and Bob Chapek came back in, only for Bob Iger to be back, and the fiasco. But I think I do worry with this success, and while I'm very happy that Inside Out 2 was successful, and I think it is very much a sequel that delivered in a lot of senses and was very much the right step forward, I feel this could be bad for the future of the company of Pixar. Okay, so now let's try and understand why Inside Out 2 was such a success, whereas other recent Pixar films perhaps failed. Now, Soul, Turning Red and Luca were harshly put onto Disney Plus. Now, the latter two were very unfair cases where I think it was ridiculous, and then they got half-assed theatrical releases years down the line, which did not help them. I think it made sense for Soul, because Soul came out in December 2020, and that was a great kind of Christmas treat and a big thing for Disney Plus. The Luca one, I guess they did it with Raya and The Last Dragon's was putting it on Premier Access, and they were trying and that sort of stuff, but I think Luca deserved Premier Access in some case, but with Turning Red it was just ridiculous. But they all did okay on streaming, and they were all successes, and in my opinion, I think all three are at least good films, with one of them, Soul, I'm doing a Pixar ranking in a few weeks if you didn't know. I think he's one of the best Pixar's ever done. Now, Elemental was a very weird case for Pixar because it had a disastrous opening and was catastrophic, but through word of mouth and by the end it was just short of 500 million, and other markets going to it later on. Now, it wasn't the return that Pixar hoped, although it did double the budget of the film, but it was a decent greenlight. And as for Lightyear, my reasoning for why I think Lightyear flopped was just because of the marketing for the film. It didn't look exciting, and it wasn't very good all in all, and I think that people maybe weren't too inclined to go see that. Why did Inside Out crush the total of Elemental in 14 measly days? Well, there's two reasons. Now, the obvious reason is that it's a sequel to a beloved property. The first film made 900 million and almost made $1 billion itself, and a sequel will always succeed the successor because it's an established franchise. I think similarly, the first Inside Out was a huge success and a needed win for Pixar at the time, funny enough, which is quite funny. It was such a popular film, and I feel like kids who grew up with Inside Out will be around Roddy's age now when this comes out, so I think there's kind of a nostalgic element. The second one, and this one is difficult to explain, and this is the second reason why I think that, and this is a hard one. I think Inside Out 2 was a very universal Pixar film. I think other recent Pixar films were very unique in the way they told very intimate stories, and a lot of them were based off stories based off the director. For example, Luca was based off his childhood, the director of Turning Red was based off her childhood, and Elemental related heavily to kind of the vision and kind of the multiple culture stuff going on in Elemental. These stories maybe didn't have a mass appeal and maybe didn't connect with everybody, and I think, especially with something like Turning Red, I saw a lot of people criticise that film, but I think people failed to understand what that was going for. I think a big issue that Disney has been trying to do is that they do want to please everybody as a company, incorporate every minority, show everybody, and I think that's great, and I'm all for representation, but sadly, the rest of the world isn't exactly like that, and the rest of the world maybe don't go out to see these films, and there's exceptions, obviously. I think if the films are really solid, something like a Black Panther was one of the most boldest MCU films, one of the most critically acclaimed and successful. But I fear that the creativity from directors to tell these unique personal stories will be gone, and these visions can't be fulfilled. I fear a future of sequels for Pixar. We already know about the fifth Toy Story, but if Inside Out 2 was so big, and the fifth Toy Story will probably be quite successful as well, why not do The Incredibles 3, or a Finding Marlin, or the WALL-E 2, Cars 4 for God's sake, or Coco 2, a film that really doesn't need to exist. And the record for Pixar with sequels has not been very solid. You know, the Toy Story trilogy, everyone agrees, was fantastic, and Toy Story 4 is a divisive film that I do like. I think Finding Dory was good, but weaker than the original. Inside Out 2 seems to be a bit of an anomaly, in the sense that it was rare that it worked. I feel like the reason why it worked Inside Out 2, and this is not a review of Inside Out 2, but I think because the first film left their places to go, it made a world, and it gave an obvious cliffhanger for the next one to take up with. But I think the sad reality of the success of Inside Out 2 is that I think Pixar will be too scared in the future to be reckless and bold with choices. I think in the past, Pixar were always a company that would push the boundaries and make films about things that you wouldn't expect, and things that were weird concepts. Ratatouille was a film that was mental, because how did that work? Same with something like a Monsters Inc. I fear that we would lose in that, and instead they're making more popcorn entertainment, in the sense of to appeal to the lowest common denominator who will eat up the content, like a studio like Illumination consistently does. They always push the boundaries, made the most insane concept deliver, but I fear we won't see that anymore. So as a major fan of Pixar, I'm beyond happy for this win of Inside Out 2, and I think it was a great film. Please don't make this the norm. And it's a great win, but I hope that this helps Elio, because of course Elio, people kind of forgot about it. You know, the Pixar film that was meant to come out before and said actually we got pushed back. I hope because of this film's success, people are more inclined to say, okay, Pixar can still make good films, and they will go and see that. So, yeah, that's the message, and I'm just worried for the future of a company that I care so deeply about. So, that was why I'm worried about the success of Inside Out 2. I'm sorry for the short video, but I just needed a kind of return, easier video. Going forward, I'm going to be ranking all of the Pixar films at some point, including Inside Out 2, in similar vein to how I did with the Boy Meets World episodes of the Disney films. I'm also going to be doing a video on Disney's Wish and why it was such a disaster, in my opinion. And I'm also going to be doing the last of the kind of Ed Sheeran rankings we got soon.